Okay, welcome everyone. We have a very exciting program today. Lots of information to exchange, and I'm sure lots of questions that will be coming up. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our program coordinator, Bev Bean, and let her take over.
I want to welcome you all, and the first thing I'd like to do is ask our speakers to come up to the seats on the podium, and I will introduce them as they arrive. For Public Water now, we have Michael Baer, and Doug Wilhelm, and for CalAm, we have Catherine Stedman and Evan Jacobs. Can you all fit? Okay. In 2007, the League studied water distribution systems and established 4 criteria regarding public ownership. These criteria are the questions on your table, the yellow pages, and the focus of today's discussion. Each side will have 5 minutes to respond to each question. At the end, we will have a question and answer period. We would like you to submit your questions in writing. Okay, well, so we will begin with the first question with Catherine Stedman, and I will read the question, and then she will start. Water is a necessary resource for human life. As such, any entity responsible for the management, safety, and distribution of water should fulfill these criteria. How well has CalAm and/or how well would the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District maintain the viability of the resources, including water quality and environmental standards, and maintain a sustainable water supply?
Great. Well, first of all, Beverly, thank you very much for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, because I think it's so important that we have opportunities to talk about issues that really matter to our community in a civil discussion and conversation. So again, thank you. We appreciate being here. The question covers a lot of ground, but I would really like to focus on the aspect of a sustainable water supply, because as we sit here today, we do not have a sustainable water supply. Our water comes primarily from the Carmel River and the Seaside Groundwater Basin, and there are orders on both of those sources of supply that restrict what we can pump. I'd like to be clear that on the Seaside Groundwater Basin, we face a court adjudication. California American Water actually filed for that adjudication. We asked for a court to come in and determine how much water could be sustainably pumped from that basin, because we knew that in our effort to reduce our pumping from the Carmel River, there were more withdrawals taking place in the Seaside Basin, and we wanted to make sure that that resource was going to be available for future generations and for our customers in the long term. The Carmel River has been the primary source of water supply for this community really since the community first formed here. And in the 1970s and the 1980s, when the population was growing, there were wells drilled alongside that river to supplement the supply that was coming from the dams and meet the demand of the growing population. Those wells were fully permitted, legal sources of supply that served this community for years. It wasn't until the early 1990s, when we were in the middle of a very serious drought, that the Sierra Club and the Steelhead Association went to the state of California and said, we think that the river is drying up not only because of the physical drought, but because of the pumping from these wells. And the state looked into the complaint, and on one day in 1995, they ruled that those wells were pumping underflow from the river. There were not the required water rights to pump that water. And so literally overnight, 70% of our water supply became illegal. And I think it's important to clarify that, because I've been at meetings where people say, CalAm is illegally pumping the river, and they make it sound as if we are committing a crime. But it's important to understand that, again, the rules literally change for this community in one day. And the State Water Resources Control Board didn't just take away 70% of our water supply without giving us a path forward. On the same day, they also granted water rights to the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District to build a new dam on the Carmel River. And it's really been since that time that many stakeholders, and I think California American Water has really been the leader, have been going forth to find a solution to get off of the Carmel River. And it has been a long path. We certainly understand how frustrating it has been for the community that the issue is not solved yet. But along the way, I would like to think that we have learned a lot. And that's the reason why our proposal today, the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project, has the support of the Sierra Club, has the support of Landwatch, has the support of the Planning and Conservation League and the Surfrider Foundation, and agencies like the California Coastal Commission that has historically have been opposed to desal, but have said that in this circumstance, California American Water is really taking the right approach to solve our problem. And the last thing I would say, part of the question does deal with water quality. You can see from the slide, American Water, 99% compliance with federal drinking standards. This is the area where we really shine as water professionals. American Water is the largest investor-owned water utility in the country, and we bring a level of expertise to everything that we do. I will add that a recent study came out looking at EPA data and showed that actually publicly owned systems have 24% more violations of the Safe Water Drinking Act than investor-owned utilities.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you to Beverly and the League for inviting us here today. Talking about viability of resources. Carmel River's been overdrafted. It's created a cease and desist order. The Seaside Aquifer has been overdrafted, leading to adjudication of the basin. Historically, Cal-Am has done a poor job of stewardship, failing to manage the resource wisely or in a sustainable fashion. This is largely because profit motive is the driving force in decision making. And I'll come back to this over and over again today. They can also wreck it and then profit from restoring it. This problem of poor stewardship is augmented when you realize that the Water Management District has had 5 successes in developing new water sources since the CDO in '95. They initiated the Aquifer Storage and Recovery, known as ASR, which draws excess winter runoff from the Carmel River and delivers it to the Seaside Aquifer. They have partnered with Pebble Beach to develop recycled water for the golf courses, for golf course irrigation, which saves potable water for other uses. They pioneered and acquired the rights for the Seaside Groundwater Basin on behalf of Peninsula Water users. They were in the negotiation that allowed us to use the Seaside Basin. Cal-Am then overdrafted their allotment, leading to the adjudication and the court-ordered restriction on use. Number 4, they partnered with the PCA to develop the Pure Water Reclamation Project, contractual agreements which are currently at 3,500 acre-feet and negotiating to be expanded further. And they partnered with Pacific Grove, the City of Pacific Grove, to use stormwater and reclaimed water for golf course irrigation in Pacific Grove. In the same time period, Cal-Am has had 3 failures, totaling $35 million in stranded costs, 1 dam and 2 desal projects between '95 and 2011. And the odds are pretty good that they will be 0 for 4, as the desal plant they're working on today is deeply flawed. There are several obstacles, which can be seen because they're still in an EIR for several years. Cal-Am should stick to the water delivery business because they have demonstrated no acumen in the water development business. Their drive for maximizing profits interferes with their ability to make wise decisions in water development projects. As far as water quality is concerned, many people in this district won't drink the unfiltered water from the tap that's delivered by Cal-Am. And I'd like to do a survey in the room. Who in this room drinks the unfiltered water from your tap or cooks with it. Close to half. It looks about 50-50. So I'll let that speak for itself. And I will pass the balance of my time, maybe more questions, or I might go a minute over on my next go-around.
The second question, how well has CalAm and/or how well would the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District maintain the physical assets, including the water distribution and storage systems, including having comprehensive and long-range plans for such maintenance and improvements?
Okay, maintaining the physical assets, maintenance, and improvements. Profit motive is the overarching driving force here too, leading to poor decision making. Maintenance is not in CalAm's wheelhouse. It's not a profitable endeavor. As an example, the deferred routine maintenance that led to the silting up of the San Clemente Dam and its removal. The infrastructure is far more profitable than maintenance. Deconstruction costs for the dam were approved at $74 million, and with interest, the total swells to $154 million that it's on our bill to take the dam down. There had been a competing plan for the dam at the time that was developed in cooperation with the Army Corps of Engineers for about $50 million to retrofit and dredge the dam, to improve and modernize the fish ladders, and to regain the storage capacity behind the dam, with favorable funding and grants to mitigate the costs to the ratepayers. CalAm interfered in the CPUC process, and we, the ratepayers, are stuck with paying the whole bill on the more expensive plan, some of which washed away in the big rains of last winter. I want to talk about improvements that they've built, which is not much in the 50 years they've been here. CalAm misled the public and the Coastal Commission on the building of the test slant well for the desal plant. They said it would draw water from under the ocean, but they built it so that it largely draws water from under the land, which creates water rights issues, which creates almost guaranteed litigation in the future, which creates additional costs, which creates delays, which creates additional risk for missing the CDO deadline, which, if Mr. Norigi is correct, will lead to water rationing. CalAm is actually building something else. It's the Monterey pipeline at an estimated cost of over $50 million. Once again, profit motive was the overarching driver of the pipeline route decision. The Monterey pipeline traverses from the seaside terminus of their delivery system through parts of Seaside, Monterey, and Pacific Grove to the David Avenue Reservoir in Pacific Grove near Erdley Avenue, where it reconnects to the existing infrastructure. For nearly 2 years, members of PublicWater Now had advocated for a much simpler route that would avoid the city streets, the interruptions to service, both the planned and unplanned interruptions, and save tens of millions of dollars. Although many of us have been patiently tolerating the inconvenience of this major effort, our patience is about to be tried further, because this route includes a pipeline bridge across Highway 68, next to the road bridge at Mark Thomas Drive by the fairgrounds. The highway will be reduced to one lane each way while the foundations are being installed, and then closed completely for several days, not exactly sure. The paper said a week, but you know how construction goes, while the actual bridge span is installed. The alternative route that we proposed would have gone under an existing underpass of Highway 68, causing little interruption. When CalAm plans for stuff, inconvenience to the public is low on their priority list of concern. Once again, decisions are made about maximizing revenues from all aspects of their operation. Thank you.
Well, this question, it does get to an issue that I think is greatly misunderstood, and that is that California American Water does not own the water. The water is owned by the people of California, and that's protected in the public trust doctrine. What California American Water owns is the infrastructure. All of the pipes and the plants and the wells that are required in order to produce, treat, and deliver water to our customers on a 24/7 basis. So in Monterey, we have 635 miles of water main. That's enough to stretch from Monterey to Arizona. 105 storage tanks, 36 wells, 10 treatment plants, pumping stations, everything that is required to make sure that when you turn on your tap, there is water flowing and it's water that's meeting all environmental, health, and safety standards. We invest about $10 million a year into this system to make sure that that infrastructure is in good condition and that it's serving its function. We recently completed a main replacement program, $15 million just in the city of Seaside. And I think the evidence of how well that program is working is really in our non-revenue water rate. So that's a technical term, but it refers to the amount of water that is lost in our system due to leaks. On the Monterey Peninsula, our non-revenue water rate is 4%. Now, looking nationally at all water utilities, publicly owned, privately owned, the average rate is 16%. So we are literally at 1/4 of the national average when it comes to our leak rate, and that's because of the proactive investment that we do in the system. You know, you may hear a story in the news about an emergency water main break and Cal-Am is out there to repair it, and you think that could be the extent of what we're doing in the system. But we are actually planning on a 20-year horizon. We do 5-year assessments that look at where do leaks occur in this system? What is the material of main where the leak has occurred? What is the age of the main? And based on that, we have an ongoing capital program that prioritizes where those replacements and investments need to be made. And part of the reason that we have put such a concerted effort on reducing our leaks is the cease and desist order. And just as we ask our customers to do everything you can to save water so we can be in compliance with these restrictions, we have to do the same thing. And we really have put an increased focus on reducing leaks and investing in the system, in part as a response to those restrictions on the Carmel River. With my remaining time, I would just like to quickly address some of the items that Michael brought up. The San Clemente Dam, this was built in 1921, and when it was built, it was envisioned that the dam would last about 100 years, and it did. There was no mechanism built into that dam to get rid of silt. And in fact, the siltation of dams is a natural process. Today in California, there are 200 dams that are either 1/2 to 1/3 filled with sediment. We committed to that project $50 million, which was the lowest cost solution to meet the earthquake issues with the dam. We were under an order from the state to address the seismic safety issues. And we said we will only commit our customers up to the minimum dollar amount to solve that earthquake safety problem, which was $50 million. Then the state and the federal agencies said, well, we will come up with the remaining $34 million that's required to remove the dam and help address the environmental issues on the river. So there are so many legislators and leaders in this state that have really held up the San Clemente Dam removal project as an example of how public and private partnerships should work. And in terms of the cost, what your water bill pays for is all of the infrastructure that I just discussed. It's the cost of delivering water. And sometimes that also includes the cost of retiring infrastructure. It's part of the price that's associated with having reliable delivery, water delivery service. In terms of the test well, I see I just have 30 seconds. But what I would say is that the test well is operating exactly as planned. It's been in place for 2 years, regularly producing 2,000 gallons a minute. Our salinity levels are in the 90% range. Many qualified hydrogeologists have looked at the testing data that comes from the well and found that the well is not having any impact on the groundwater basin.
Thank you, Catherine. You will start with question 3. How well has Cal-Am and/or how well would the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District set fair and responsible rates? including a fair and transparent process and adequate information to the public, and whether rates include costs that address unapproved future projects. So, Cal-Am?
Great. Well, thank you all for having me here today. Evan Jacobs, Beverly, League of Women Voters, thank you. If we're going to talk about rates in the Monterey Peninsula, we're going to have to talk about the Public Utilities Commission. And I can see from all the smiles in the room, many of you don't like the PUC process. Sometimes California American Water does not like the process either. Every 3 years, we have to go there and we're required to file a general rate case. That process takes at least 18 months. Often it takes a much longer time. It's a long process, it's arduous, it can be confusing at times. Much of the work is done outside the community in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Sacramento. And then once we get a result, you'll see that our bills frequently change. We have surcharges that go onto the bill to recover a specific cost. When those costs are recovered, that surcharge drops off. So it's a long, complicated process. It's not always very clear to customers what exactly is going on. So why would you want to be served by a PUC-regulated utility? Why would you want to go through that process? The flip side of that long, arduous process is that it is a thorough process. Every 3 years, we go up to the PUC, we open our books to them. We account for all of our costs down to the penny to them. We account for our operating and maintenance costs. We account for our capital infrastructure costs. If we say we've built a water tank in Seaside, commission staff comes down and lays a hand on that tank to make sure that it's physically there and filled with water. So it is a very, very detailed process that gives us no cover and looks through all aspects of our operation. The PUC is staffed with experts in utility rate making. It's staffed with engineers, financial analysts, accountants who do all of this work on your behalf. They work very hard at this. They know what they are doing. And as I say, they're experts on it. In addition, you have the Office of Ratepayer Advocates. The Office of Ratepayer Advocates is an independent group that is specifically charged by state law and state constitution to protect the best interests of customers, residential customers, in the PUC rate-making process. So there's a lot going on there for a very thorough process. I will also say, and I'm sure all of you know, we were just last week at a public participation hearing. The PUC does come and solicit both informal comments through letters, emails, public participation hearings like the one we had last week. I was sorry to miss that. As well as formal participation where individuals and groups can formally intervene in the PUC process, become a party to the case, work alongside ORA on it, make discovery requests to our company and actually get that information from us. I know Public Water now has participated in that. And speaking of surcharges, I think one of the things you'll see on your bill in the coming months is a surcharge to recover money so that Public Water now will get about $17,000 back from the PUC and back from Monterey Peninsula ratepayers to their contribution to the last PUC proceeding. So there are some real protections there. Real quickly, let's talk about what does government rate making look like in California. You all are probably familiar with Proposition 218 and the Proposition 218 process, which is how a municipal agency or government agency makes a rate determination. It can take about 90 days to 120 days for them to do so. First thing that's required is that staff writes a memo explaining what they are requesting. Then an elected body or appointed body, city council, county supervisors, board of directors, votes on that. Protests are mailed out to customers, and every customer that's a billing customer gets the opportunity to protest a rate case under the 218 process. They have 30 days to do so. Once that protest period is closed, there's a final decision and the rate goes into effect. Government agencies can extend their rates for as long as 5 years, where we are only allowed to do so every 3 years. In addition, with that process, I will tell you, it's a tough hurdle to get over for that 50% protest process. So in many ways, I think the PUC process offers more opportunities for customers to get involved, and it's a more thorough vetting of rates. Last comment on this is to talk a little bit about a group known as the state auditor. The state of California operates and maintains an independent auditing branch. State Auditor's Office, it's appointed by the governor. 3 times in the last 5 years, lawmakers have asked the state auditor in different parts of California to look at the water rate-making process to see where it's working. And all 3 of those cases, they've looked at comparisons between PUC-regulated water utilities and government-regulated water utilities. And one of the key findings, and I think maybe we'll have it up there, is that you'll see that the legislative auditor has always found that the PUC process provides as good or better residential customer protections and residential ratepayer protections compared to the government rate-making process. Thank you.
We recently established a record, and now Cal-Am Monterey is #1. I better expand on that to say that we're #1 in terms of the most expensive water in the U.S. You all should have this exhibit in front of you. It's from Food and Water Watch, which is a nonprofit. They analyzed the cost of water for users. We were #9 4 years ago, but in the last 4 years, we've increased our prices 68%, and so we're now #1. One of the first things that we did when we decided that we wanted to go toward being on the ballot in 2018 was we established a committee that had the objective of studying and determining the financials for Cal-Am Monterey. Those are not published in any one place, but we were able to pull together what we think is a conservative set of numbers, which you have in front of you. The team that was responsible for developing these numbers consisted of senior level government employees, business executives, and a university professor. Before going any further, though, I want to mention that Cal-Am is a legal monopoly operating under the rules of the California Public Utility Commission. And under these rules, the annual profit is limited to 10.99% of the equity that's invested. This means that profit can be increased only through adding additional capital. The more, the better. Fortunately, the CPUC issues a series of reports about Cal-Am's operations. With some sleuthing, we've been able to pull up what we believe is a conservative estimate of their operation. And that's the pie chart that you have on your table. And I'm going to discuss that next. Last year, Cal-Am Monterey had income of $60 million. The largest expense was for local operations for $32 million. This includes, for example, system operators and meter readers. All non-management personnel will be given the opportunity to continue with public water. But we are assuming for the purpose of this exercise, no savings from the area of local operations. Non-local operations total $8 million. This includes a wide range of expenses, such as Cal-Am management expenses in San Diego, billing, accounting, and engineering. Much of this work will be handled locally, increasing local employment and investment. Although we believe a significant savings is possible in non-local operations, we are conservatively estimating no savings for the purpose of this pie chart. We are left with a profit of $14 million and taxes of $5 million. Since this is a publicly owned water company, we will not pay taxes. The available funds will be $19 million based on 2016, and escalating with future capital investments such as the Cal-Am Monterey pipeline and possibly a desal plant. Although it's not possible to know today the cost to buy Cal-Am Monterey, our analysis is that ample funds will be available without increasing water cost. And likely there will be an immediate savings of 5 to 10% for water users, growing to 30% in the long term.
We all know about the high rate of water costs. I just want to say to PUC what he said about how wonderful they are. You know, I just ask you to use your discernment about how you feel about that. Because I don't have a lot of confidence in them.
How well has Cal-Am and/or how well would the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District meet the following criteria? 4, maintain an efficient local office, including responding quickly to complaints, a well-trained staff, a responsive management team, and a transparent decision-making process.
So, if you have a problem with Cal-Am, you call the number on the bill for customer service. And that takes you to a call center, which Doug pointed out is outside of our area. There are many reports, just talking to people who have had less than favorable experiences in dealing with these customer service agencies around the country. They've also reported seemingly random decisions for resolving the issues. In contrast, agency headquarters for the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District is in Ryan Ranch. You can go right to the chief. His office is 5 miles from here. You can go to the monthly board meetings to talk to his bosses. You get to vote for those bosses. If the Water Management District ran the water company, $8 million, as Doug said, of expenditures for services outside the area, such as the call centers, could be returned to our community. That's currently 14% of the total revenues that Cal-Am gained on the 2016 numbers. I'd like to take the balance of time, this is where I may go a little over, for this question to read some of the testimonials from on Cal-Am services that have been collected, either through the news or the newspaper or next door. There's a variety of places where people complain about the service. Number 1, for the last several months, our streets in Seaside have been a rubble. I do not believe the residents of Seaside were given advance notification from Cal-Am that they would be ripping up the streets. Last week, we got up to find we had no water. We checked the leaks throughout our house and the outside irrigation system. Finding none, we called Cal-Am, and we were told that they were working in the area and we may have interrupted service during the day, but that they should be finished by 5 p.m. We still had no water by 7 p.m. We called again and we were told our water would be back on by 11:45 p.m. This could result in a widespread sanitation issue and a lot of unnecessary stress. There was no advance notice, so we could not prepare for this disruption. Would it be appropriate to fine Cal-Am as they fine us when we use too much? Other utilities with the same contact information that Cal-Am has for their customer base always provides advance notification when this magnitude of potential service interruption is being planned. Poor planning and poor customer service. That was a letter in the Herald. Number 2, upon receiving our increased water bill, we waited until after the weekend to phone in a request for a smaller water meter. The first business day, we phoned, we got a busy signal. The robot gave us 44 minutes of wait time. We went online as they suggested and completed the Cal-Am form. Response to be received, and we're told that the response would be received within 24 hours. Second business day, we phoned, busy signal, and the robot gave us a wait of over an hour. No response received from our online work. Third business day, today, Cal-Am offices are closed with a sign, "Closed for staff meeting." Still no response received from our online work. It's also in the paper. I think this one comes from next door. Number 3. My home in Pacific Grove was for sale and everything was turned off. The home had just received full clearance from the Water Management District for having all the proper fixtures. When 4 days following the inspection, I received a $6,000 water bill. 4 days after my Water Management District paperwork was signed off, Cal-Am tells me I have a leak. all water and gas are turned off. Number 4, I had a $9,800 monthly water bill and called Cal-Am. My bills were usually $30 or $40 at most. I called Cal-Am and they came out after KION had called. Cal-Am wanted to come out that very night. Cal-Am had me pay $2,400 on my fixed income. Not only that, I received every month a pink notice with late notice on the heading, telling me that I needed to pay or my water would be turned off. After Cal-Am had sent me a notice with the monthly payments on my fixed income for the next year or year and a half, I received a warning which affected my credit rating. Again, after I had signed off on a monthly payment program. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots, and I was looking for more, and I couldn't find them. I didn't know if I'd have this much time. I'm going to take one more minute if I will. There was the one about the church. When the rates went up in April significantly because they changed the way the rate structure. There was a church that saw their water bill triple. There was one that was really profound. A guy who was he lived in a multiple dwelling, and you know, like multiple family dwelling. It seemed like small, like a triplex or something. It didn't really say, but he said his bill went up from $400 to like $1,600. And that's a reflection of how they changed the rule by eliminating the per person allocation. It means large families are going to get hammered on the bill. And then there was one just a few weeks ago, and I couldn't find it, but a similar situation, a spiked bill, and then a second spiked bill, and Cal-Am said, and they couldn't find any problem, you know, no leaks, Cal-Am couldn't find the problem, okay, we'll forgive it. And a second spiked bill a few months later, and they say, well, we only give one forgiveness every 2 years, so you're going to have to pay this one. Without any, you know, discovering a problem, except what it said on the meter. And then if any of you were at the meeting last Monday at the ratepayer reading, a woman got up and said, you know, I've lost my job, my bills are $800, I can't understand why my bills are $800. So that's about customer service. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess I will just start off by saying that, yes, after the cease and desist order, we instituted a rate design that is so steeply tiered that if you do have a water leak, the result is going to be a very high bill. But we have an extremely generous leak adjustment policy. We have already this year given out more than $2 million in leak adjustments because the purpose of the rate design is to discourage people from wasting water. It's not to penalize a customer that has a leak that they took responsible measures to fix that maybe they weren't aware of for no fault of their own. Also, I would add that often when you see these letters to the editor or comments on Nextdoor, there is a lot that goes into these individual situations with customers. And oftentimes there has been a great deal of contact between our customer service folks and the customers that isn't necessarily reported by the newspapers. And I can just assure you today that we are committed to working with every single customer to make sure that you are billed correctly and that you are billed fairly. Something that I often hear is people will say to me, you know, we like you, or we like your employees, but we just don't like your company. And I think that people say that because, for the most part, if you have had the opportunity to interact with one of our field service representatives or our conservation or our customer service staff locally, you know that we are courteous, we're professional, we care about our customers. That is one of our core values as a company. And I would say that you can't like me and not like Cal-Am, or like our other employees and not like Cal-Am, because we are one and the same. The company is our employees. It's a collection of individuals, many of whom you know because we live and work in this community. I know that there is a lot of consternation because we have a national call center. But the majority of inquiries that we get to that call center are for very routine items, I've been to the call center, I sat in on calls, and the 2 days that I did, every single call that I received with the representative was either to turn water on because somebody was moving into a new apartment or home, or turn water off and close their account because they were moving. It's bill payment plans, billing questions, and these types of items can be handled very efficiently by a national call center. You see the statistics on the screen. 95% of calls from Monterey answered within 30 seconds or less. So the National Call Center handles these routine items well, and if there's something that they cannot do, they forward those inquiries to our local office. They are able to be open longer hours, and so when emergencies occur, they can dispatch service orders straight to our guys in the field. So there's a lot of efficiencies that come with that call center, not the least of which is tremendous cost savings. Every state that makes up American Water pays for a portion of that center, so our customers here in Monterey just pay for a small fraction of what it takes to run that call center. And the same is true of our National Water Quality Lab. So, you know, I again have been at presentations where I've heard if this ballot measure succeeds and there is an eminent domain, then we're going to be able to get rid of all of this corporate overhead and have a savings, a cost savings to customers. But all of those resources, if an eminent domain is successful, would have to be rebuilt here locally or contracted out, which would definitely be an additional cost to customers here. And the last thing I would say on customer service is that running a water system is a 24/7 operation. So it does not matter if it's a holiday, if it's 3 a.m., if it's raining outside, if there is a water emergency, we are out there to fix it. And it's a basic part of our community. It's part of our public health and safety, just like hospitals, police, and fire. It's a very serious responsibility, and it's one that we're committed to and dedicated to, and that we consider an honor to fulfill here.
Thank you, Catherine. Each side will have 3 minutes for closing comments, and we'll start with Public Water now.
Hello. Okay. I just had one last thing from this last bit, which was, does the forgiveness on these massive bills, the $2 million you mentioned, might that show up in the under collections that we pay, the RAM charges? And we just don't know that. Okay. We have the most, this is closing, and some of this stuff is, they've already addressed, but I still think it's critical to see it from this point of view. We have the most expensive water bill in the nation, but currently Cal-Am has never paid a single penny for a single gallon of water that they send through their delivery system. Every drop from the Carmel River or from the Seaside Basin has been taken. Nobody sold it to them. The cost of the product itself on an annualized basis is zero. Why is it so expensive then? Because of the way it is structured. Cal-Am strives to maximize profits. It's their mission to deliver to their shareholders. The PUC, who allegedly exists to help ensure that the ratepayers have affordable services, has utterly failed to do so. We are victims of this unsavory marriage. If we become a public utility, the marriage is dissolved. The PUC, as the water rate service rate setter, will join Cal-Am in leaving town. Because the PUC has proven that Cal-Am bears no financial risk for projects that fail, Cal-Am can undertake anything that they like to try that might make a tidy return, regardless of how sensible it is. Here's the most glaring example that I see. Cal-Am undertook the desal project without securing the water rights, with only a barely plausible plan to obtain them. And they said the slant well is working as planned. Apparently they planned to take it from under the ground instead of under the ocean. Now we are investing somewhere between $50 and $100 million before we can find out if they have the right to do what they intend to do. I submit that a public agency would never proceed on such a path of folly because they would bear the responsibility and the unreasonable risk would keep them sensible. Cal-Am bears no such risk and no such sensibility. We do. Please help us rectify this injustice. Go to publicwaternow.org, sign up to volunteer as signature gatherers, hosting house parties, or staffing the campaign office, or donating, or all of the above. The ensuing campaign will be filled with misinformation and fear tactics from Cal-Am and their allies. We have seen it before. But together we can win this and deliver professional stewardship with transparent, responsible management of our most precious public resource for ourselves, for our children, and for our grandchildren. Thank you for the opportunity to share this time with you. Please come to the movie tomorrow, Water and Power at Lighthouse Cinema, and I hope to see some of you there.
Well, I think we've found a point of agreement, which especially in this water system here in the Monterey Peninsula, the water itself is free. It's not purchased from anywhere else. It all comes from this peninsula. What customers pay for in their water bills are for the pipes, the storage, the treatment, all the infrastructure that goes along with that, as well as the employees that have to be out there every day doing their job. And they have to do the same job, treating the water, checking the infrastructure, making repairs, whether we sell a lot of water or a little water. One of the reasons why the per unit cost of water in this area is so high is because there is a fundamental water supply challenge here. I think everyone knows that. We have an unsustainable water supply on the Monterey Peninsula. We need to fix that. I believe we are well positioned to fix that. I know some of you may think differently. One of the reasons why I came down here in the first place and agreed to participate in this debate is I'm Catherine's equivalent in Northern California. I've spent a lot of my last 10 years making sure that people in Sacramento get their water meters installed because they used to pay a flat rate for as much water as they could use. I've worked very hard on drought response around the state for our company and with other water utilities, and I've spent a lot of time working recently on groundwater. But before I did all that, I worked extensively in Felton, California, which I know has been a subject of a lot of discussion down here. I want to share with you my experience in Felton. And there were a lot of well-meaning people in Felton. I think a lot of the folks here that are involved in public water now are well-meaning. There were a lot of promises made in Felton. I think chief among them, a promise that was made was that water costs would be lowered if there was a public takeover of the water system in Felton. I heard that a lot of times. And Doug, I would tell you, I also heard a lot of time that all of our employees that weren't management were going to be hired. At the end of the day, not one of them were. All of them came to work down here instead because we offered to continue their employment. So I appreciate that you say that. I believe that you know that. I hope that if this comes true and this happens, you really make sure that happens because I've seen that promise made before and it not be carried out by the condemning water agency. So let's talk a little bit about San Lorenzo Valley. They promised lower water rates. What we saw them doing was holding all of their costs down. They didn't make any infrastructure investments during the condemnation. They used all of their reserves to fund their operating and maintenance costs. The day after the Felton water system takeover occurred, they went out and filed to increase their water rates. They've been increasing water rates ever since. I will tell you, I know I saw a handout from Public Water Now that showed what the water rates were in San Lorenzo Valley Water District in June of 2017. I will tell you, if you go to the San Lorenzo Valley Water District rate calculator now, you'll see they've had an approximately 50% rate increase in their rates since that document was put in on June 17 water rates. And water rates in San Lorenzo Valley Water District, and that document is out of date, and those water rates are much higher, and those customers are paying much higher rates and taxes than they were under us. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay. Thank you both. Thank you all. I have a number of questions here. I would like you to keep your answers reasonably brief, and each side will have an opportunity to answer. Is Cal-Am committed to using power from Monterey Bay Community Power? And is the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District similarly committed? Let's start with Cal-Am.
I think what we're committed to is finding the most affordable source of power for the desalination project. So we've already talked with the folks at the waste management plant about the possibility of methane gas. It's really too premature to have an answer on where the power will be purchased from, but we will be choosing the power source that is most cost effective for our customers.
We are going to be acquiring Cal-Am's operations, whatever they may be. So it's currently up to Cal-Am to be sorting out what they want to do in terms of power. By the time we get the operation, I think that's already going to have been decided for us.
I'd just like to add, my understanding about community power is that it's supposed to match PG&E, but with much greener resources. So I think they ought to be, whoever's running the company is going to have to make that evaluation. The management district would have to make that evaluation like Cal-Am. But it seems to me, hopefully, either one will take advantage because less carbon in the atmosphere, I think, through community power.
Okay, this question will start with public water now. We saved water and our bills went up because the PUC guaranteed Cal-Am a certain profit, which they didn't reach because of conservation. This, according to a letter Cal-Am sent to explain higher rates. Since when is a company guaranteed a specific profit? The stockholders, not the clients, should lose.
That's the structure that we're talking about. They do have a guaranteed rate. There's a reason for a monopoly. We can't have them go out of business because we all need water. And if they were to go under, then then what are we going to do? But there's no incentive for efficiencies because they have this guarantee, 10%. And if you look, I was at a meeting, I think it was 2014, and they were talking about annual revenues of $49 million. And this was for the rate case that went in April. They asked me to come. And, in the latest notice we got on the thing from last week, they said their current revenues are $65 million. And there's a 23% rate increase that's happening January 1st on top of the 9%, 8.5% that they're asking for at that increase, before we spend $300 million. So slant wells are the most expensive technology for intake. So it's the incentives that aren't there.
So I'll tell you, I was looking, and I think in the most recent month, everybody here saved about 10% water compared to 2013. It is an issue that is a frustration around the state for water consumers. Every water agency, every water company in the state, virtually, there may be a couple exceptions, but they just prove the rule, has been forced to raise water rates since the drought. The reason why is because we are a high fixed cost business. So we don't get a lot of savings when we sell less waters. I talked about earlier, we have the same pipes, the same infrastructure that needs to be paid for and needs to be funded. We can't lay off employees and not have them go to the treatment plant and operate the treatment plant every day. By our nature, it is a very capital-intensive business. There are few opportunities for savings when water use goes down. Up in Sacramento, we have seen astronomical rate increases of government agencies as well. Frankly, San Lorenzo Valley Water District, which just had a major 5-year rate increase, did so largely because their sales revenue were down. So as frustrating as it is not isolated to the Monterey Peninsula. It's an issue throughout the state of California.
Why is it that our water is the most expensive in the United States?
I don't know. I mean, the water's free. And he talks about the infrastructure, right? All the pipes and all the, everything, the pumps, everything, right? But doesn't every other water company have, similar issues? Maybe every water company is different. And some have more challenges and some have less challenges, and we have a lot of challenges, but
I just wanted to say that San Francisco gets most of their water from Hetch Hetchy, which is almost over in the next state. And then it comes over and is pumped up the hills in San Francisco. And it's a lower price than we pay. Los Angeles gets their water at a lower price than we pay. They get water all the way from Colorado, comes across, and then has to be cleaned up. So when you look at it, the answer is nobody can really explain clearly why it's already higher. And then on top of that, that's before the increases that we're talking about for desal.
Well, I'm glad to have a chance to address this Food and Water Watch study because the study is very misleading. It's based on a level of consumption that is way higher than what our average customer in Monterey uses. And of course, because of our tiered rates, if you choose a high consumption level, you're going to wind up with a disproportionately higher bill. What determines how much your water bill costs is the capital investment that's in the system. It's the source of your water. It's the service area density and the elevations in your system. It's whatever your needs are for water treatment. And on the Monterey Peninsula, it is also the need for conservation and the need to develop a new water supply. So those are the factors that dictate the price of water in this community. And I would submit to you that if a public takeover is successful, none of those factors go away. None of that changes. All of those different costs will still be driving your water bill. And on top of that, you're going to have the cost to acquire our assets in the system. So we have seen public takeovers occur in many other communities throughout the United States. The water bills have never gone down as a result. And the cost to purchase the systems have always been higher. There was a study that came out earlier this year that actually showed the proponents of these takeovers tend to underestimate the cost of acquiring systems by 100%. So whatever figures you're hearing, just take those in your mind and at least double them. So I know that the cost of water is frustrating here, but I think the real question we need to ask ourselves is why, what are the factors that drive the cost of water, and will any of that change under public ownership? It definitely will not, in fact, be added to. And the last thing I would just want to explain is about California American Water's profit. I think it is greatly misunderstood. We do not earn a profit in the classic sense that you think of a private business making a profit. All of our operations and maintenance costs are a straight pass-through cost to the customers and, of course, overseen and regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. When we have capital projects, we invest in those projects, half in debt, and there's an interest paid on that debt, and half through shareholder equity, and there is a rate of return for the shareholders' contribution to the capital projects. It's that rate of return that is referred to as our profit. So in a government-owned water system, when they undertake a capital project, it's 100% debt, and there is a debt service paid on all of that money. So that is what you're talking about when you're talking about California American Water's profit. It's a cost of financing, and it's not guaranteed. It's an opportunity to earn, but it is actually at risk.
Thank you. Next question, and Cal-Am will answer first. Landwatch, the Planning and Conservation League, and the Surf Riders are currently supporting expansion of Pure Water Monterey as an alternative to the desal plant in the event the desal plant is delayed or not feasible. Please comment.
Personally, I think that looking into ways to find additional sources of water for the Monterey Peninsula is always a good thing. And I have no issue at all with exploring additional sources of supply because we need that here. But we are at a moment in time when we are under a cease and desist order. It is a very serious issue, and we have to solve this problem. Our project is on a course for completion to meet the deadlines of that cease and desist order. And I think that it's very important that we stick with the current plan. What's being talked about in terms of expanding Pure Water Monterey is at this point entirely conceptual. And I don't think that our community can rely on a concept to carry us through for future generations. When we think about our water supply issues, we have to be planning not just for the next 10 years, but for the next 50 years, 100 years for our children, for our grandchildren. And there is no way that we will ever really get off the Carmel River unless we have a reliable source like desalination. Recycled water, aquifer storage and recovery, all of those sources are dependent on weather, it's dependent on drought and consumption. But the ocean is a reliable source of supply, and I think it will definitely has to be part of our water future.
A lot there. I just want to go back briefly about government-owned. So currently, we're government-regulated, the PUC. They're the rate setters. In terms of government-owned, we're talking the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. That's the government, the one you get to vote for, who's on the board, the one that's right down there. Yes, they have to, they have to work with state agencies on doing all the laws, but that's the government, the local government. Desal is the most expensive. It's more expensive than doing pure water. So if you choose, a sensible way, and a lot of other towns, cities in California have suggested that they use desal as a last resort because it's the most expensive. So if they need extra water to meet their water budget, then you go to the most expensive last. This is going to the most expensive first. In terms of planning 50 to 100 years, planning for the next 50 to 100 years, we don't have to solve 100 years worth of water problems in the next 5 years. We need to develop new water sources and continue to develop new water sources. So as we move forward for the next 50 or 100 years, we can continue to develop water sources to help meet the demand. I just want to go back to how we pay for it. Okay, this graph. These guys, he told you the resumes of these guys. They worked as hard as they could, and it's not transparent. It's not easy to find this data, but they worked hard. And there's local operations and non-local operations, the cost of doing business. What's left over is taxes and whether, money for the company. It's not all, I don't know if it's profit or not, but, it's like whatever we can't say it takes to run the company or to pay taxes for the company, that's leftover money that the Water Management District won't have to pay. That's 30 cents on every dollar. Okay, so, and that is the bond money, that's your mortgage payment. We believe that we'll be able to afford the acquisition in the hundreds of millions of dollars because you can borrow money cheaper as a public agency, about half the price. Public bonds are about half the price or less than corporate bonds. So the financing charges will be half. And I just want to get to the initiative itself talks about a feasibility study. Okay, all of this stuff will be looked at. Rather than speculating about how much more it's going to cost or how much we're going to be able to save, if we pass it at the ballot, it goes to a feasibility study, which is thorough, which has two components, essentially. How much will it cost, and how will they do it? Do they have the expertise? They'll say, oh, they don't have the expertise. They've never done it before. Well, what's your plan for delivering water? And so those things will be spelled out in great detail. We're talking many millions of dollars. I'm not sure how much it'll cost. So if it's infeasible, we're out a lot of time and effort. The management district is out a few $1 million on the feasibility study. You guys are out a huge advertising budget trying to stop us, and we just go forward as we are. Yeah, we may very well end up paying some of that on our bill. It's not clear how much the shareholders pay when they go against us.
Next question.
Okay.
Certainly CalAm knew that its slant wells were approved to be located below the ocean. Why is it that CalAm located the slant wells above the SW line and into an area that is a freshwater aquifer?
Good question. I've been asking the Coastal Commission why they aren't asking that question of CalAm. In the initial application, they said it would be a sub-ocean intake. But somewhere between 80 and 90% of the intake is inside the mean high tide line, which I guess is what they mean by SW line, in the land, going into a brackish aquifer, a mix of seawater and freshwater. And besides the environmental damage, because despite what all these experts say, and some of them have conflicts of interest, when you take the water from the aquifer at the shoreline, it's more likely that that void is going to be filled with seawater because it's heavier. If you drop the water table, seawater is going to rush in before the fresh water is going to percolate down from the land. It's created the litigation. It's created water rights. If they had actually done it, it's an interesting idea because there's no water rights issues out there. And yet they said they built it exactly as planned. It's working exactly as planned. So they're saying today it was the plan to put it into the aquifer. And I think it's the deal breaker, both for environmental reasons and legal rights reasons. And you talk about meeting the CDO, Very unlikely, because people are going to sue because they believe they have rights to that water.
Well, the location of the test well is really based on discussions with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because there is snowy plover that has nesting territory on the beaches there that we needed to be out of that area. CMEX, the property owner, wanted us outside of their operations area, and then also groups that were concerned about erosion. So it was balancing all of those factors that determined the location of the test well. And what's most important about the test well is, what is the quality of water that it's drawing? How much of that is ocean water? How much is brackish water from the saltwater intruded aquifer? And since we have been running that test well, we've been at an average of about 92% ocean water. So that's really what's important about the location of the test well, is what is the quality of water that it's drawing. I am not a water rights attorney, and I won't pretend to be one. But the question of groundwater rights was looked at extensively in the EIR. I'm sure it will be again in the EIR that's released next year. And what it found is that, first of all, groundwater rights, and Evan can talk about this more, there is not a water right that is required in order for California American Water to take that brackish water that is unusable, that is so salty it is not even being used for irrigation. The city of Marina, their drinking water come from wells which are much further inland and much deeper than where our test well or where our permanent wells will be located. But if we take that otherwise unusable water and we put it to a beneficial use by treating it, then we are within the bounds of California water law. And we will be doing that. The water that is deemed to be coming from the seawater intruded aquifer will be treated and delivered to the community of Castroville, which needs additional water supplies and which is an economically disadvantaged community. So definitely, I think that this question is a complex one. It deals with water law, it deals with groundwater hydrogeology, and it's one that we should really leave to the experts. There is a hydrogeologic working group made up of licensed hydrogeologists. They have looked at all of the data drawn by the test well, and they have determined that it is not having an impact on the groundwater basin. And the Monterey County Farm Bureau, the Salinas Valley Water Coalition, the groups that have the most stake in the Salinas Valley groundwater basin support this project and also have access to that data.
Thank you. The next question will start with Cal-Am. I encounter residents who tell me the spike in their water bills is $600 to $1,000. Are there statistics kept by Cal-Am on the number of spikes and disputes? Are these spikes due to pipe maintenance problems?
I am sure that somewhere in our rate case proceedings with the PUC, the Public Water Now, is part of that data has been accrued. It has been discussed. If it has not been, every 3 years there is an opportunity for citizens to get involved and make requests for that particular set of data. I am not aware of them, though. I don't have any of those figures on hand right now. No, water meters are proven technology. They've worked for hundreds, at least 100 years, maybe not hundreds, maybe too optimistic. Water meters are pretty simple devices. They're not prone to failure that results in higher water bills. They are prone to failure that results in them stopping working in lower water bills. They're designed that way. Over the years, customers can always request that we test a meter. We can put data logs on meter to see when and where the water use is being done. I personally have never heard of a water meter that was more than 1% over its actual flow rate. When they break, they're designed to break so that they show a lower flow rate. So I would say no, it's probably not related to pipes out, beyond the water meter. And no, water meters are fairly reliable, proven technology that have been around for decades.
Yeah, I mean, Cal-Am, don't really have an answer for that at the moment. I think I want to go back to just the last question, if I could, just to clear up a couple things. Because I actually wrote a letter to the editor last week in 190 words explaining the counter-argument to what Catherine just said about this unusable water. It is true, you cannot pump that water onto the plants or drink it. It is not potable, and it's too salty for irrigation. But it has two major advantages. So it's unusable but not valueless. The two values are that the brackish water is a buffer. It holds space in the aquifer. If you take it out, as I said before, seawater will move in more quickly than fresh. It's denser, the ocean is big, there's a lot of hydrostatic pressure in the ocean. So if you take it out, you are creating seawater intrusion. The experts include Dennis Williams, who has the patents, who's taking the data, who will make personal profit if this project goes forward, because it will be the first successful slant well anywhere in the world, and he has patents for it. And he's the scientist. That's not objective. He has a conflict of interest. The PUC found that to be true in 2014. And the fact that they say it's working as planned and not causing seawater intrusion is way open to debate, and it's a big reason why we're having the delays at the PUC right now.
I just had a brief comment on the bill spikes. At a meeting with the League of Women Voters 4 years ago, Cal-Am said that before any spike bill was sent out, the customer would be called and informed that it was coming. I don't think that's happened.
That ends our question and answer period. So I would like to thank everyone for a very civil and informative discussion. Thank you all panel for coming, and thank you for your wonderful questions. We'll see you in January.